I was not planning to film a video at all right now. So this is gonna be, what? Oh, I thought I heard my mother. That's so weird. So this is gonna be extremely stream of consciousness. I apologize in advance. I'm trying to speak low because it's like 11:37 right now. I was not planning to film this video, but this idea kind of popped into my head and I realized that I had to get it out or I wasn't going to be able to go to sleep tonight. So I saw this TikTok video and for those of you who don't know, I become obsessed with TikTok. It was kind of random. I think I've talked about this before. It started because of my friends sending me all the hot lesbians and suddenly I was just on TikTok, which is something I kind of promised myself I would never do, but here we are. I say a lot. I'm probably going to try and cut those out, but that's not the point. So I saw this TikTok and it was basically talking about how like in order to really like get the love that you're looking for or whatever, you have to sort of know yourself and like, you know, understand yourself as a person. And I figured, okay, well, I mean, I'm someone who has been like between 4 and 5 letters of the LGBT community. I've been the L, the G, the B, the T, Q. So I figure like I have to have a pretty good idea of who I am, right? Like I've come out like 4 times now. I think at this point, like I have to have an idea of who I am, you'd think. So I'm thinking to myself, like, of course I know myself, right? Like that's not really a question. But then I'm thinking about it more and I'm just like, but do I know myself? And so that is what has me at almost midnight making this video, because then I started looking up, like I started like searching like how to get to know yourself, because that's like a thing that one does at 11:30 at night. And so I have like questions that I'm going to read and answer here, and maybe we can learn about ourselves together, I guess. Is that weird? Is that weird? Yeah. So this is 29 questions to discover the real you. Let's get into it. What activity in your life lights you up with joy? Honestly, writing, but also in a weird way, I do really love YouTube as well. I find that writing scripts for YouTube is a lot of fun, and that's why I end up doing all of this. So, although this video is obviously completely unscripted, as you can tell. Okay. What is something you love doing even when you were tired or rushed? And why? Again, it's got to be writing. I love writing pretty much all the time. It is hard when I'm tired though, because I sometimes feel like I don't have the energy. Like lately with everything that's been going on, I feel like I have not had the time to do anything. And that's kind of been the hardest part of all of this, is like writing was something I could do no matter what. And now I kind of feel like, oh, like I don't have the energy because of everything that's going on. And that's very frustrating to me as a person. So that question becomes more difficult because if the question is, what's something you love doing even when you're tired or rushed? I mean, I do love writing even when I'm tired. Like if I can find, you know, a moment and an idea, I love it. I love writing. It's just like, it does take a little bit of energy that's very hard right now, if that makes sense. If a relationship or job makes you unhappy, do you choose to stay or leave? I feel like those are different things, but also, I mean, I only know the answers from my past 2 experiences with both. And my last job, I stayed for 3 years longer than I should have. In my last relationship, I stayed at least a year and a half longer than I should have. So clearly I stay. What do you fear about leaving a bad job or relationship? Well, this is where I think it's kind of difficult, because with a bad job, even if it's a bad job, like you need the money, you need to be able to live, you need to be able to pay your bills, you need to be able to pay your job. Holy crap, that was weird. You need to be able to pay your bills. So like the fear there is not being able to pay my bills. But then with a relationship, I think the fear is like, part of it's like I don't want to die alone, but a part of it is also like I don't want to, I don't know, somewhere in my head with my last relationship, I felt like, you know, I was making a big deal out of little things and that I was more happy than I wasn't. So like, you know, maybe I'm expecting too much from this relationship. Maybe I'm expecting too much from this person. And so it was just easier to stay. What do you believe is possible for you? I mean, honestly, I realistically, I do believe anything is possible. But then at the same time, I'm also like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just like, is it though? Like, I've been working for all of the things that I want for like years, and it never seems to like, it always seems like it's a struggle. So then I'm kind of like, okay, well, maybe it's not possible, which I know is like, that's not how you should think, but like, so like in my head, I'm like, it is possible. It just hasn't happened yet. And that's frustrating. And sometimes makes me feel like, well, then I don't know. Maybe I am just like imagining it. I don't know. What have you done in your life that you are the most proud of? Boy, this one's actually tough because like, I always think like, oh, I'm proud of like a lot of things, but then I'm like, am I really proud of like anything in my life? Like, not that I don't say that in a bad way, but I'm saying like, I tend to play down my accomplishments a lot. And like, I've had so many people over the course of my life being like, oh, you've written like several books, even though they were unpublished, but like you've written them and that's like a big accomplishment. And I'm just like, I mean, I guess, but like, if they're not published, is it really an accomplishment? Like, does anyone actually care? So for me, it's hard to say like what I'm most proud of. I kind of think, you know, I'm really proud of, it sounds kind of silly, I guess, but I'm really proud of like the fan base I've managed to amass through my writing of fanfic. Like I love like the comments. I love how much people enjoy them and how meaningful it is to people. And I am proud of that. It seems trivial, it seems silly, but it's mine and it's real and it's never what I expected, and yet I kind of love it. What is the thing you are second most proud of? Oh my God. Second most proud of? I don't know. I don't feel like, that's the thing is like, sometimes I don't feel like I've done anything, you know? Like, I know that sounds weird, but like, I don't know. I guess I feel like if accomplishments aren't like tangible, that like other people can see them, then they're not really accomplishments to me, which is terrible, but also like, that's kind of how I feel. This is already very revealing and we're like 7 questions in. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? Okay, now this one I do feel like I know because I've always, look, I want to change the world. That's point blank period. I want my work as a writer to change the world. I want people to feel as though the world is a better place because of my writing. Obviously, that may sound, you know, a little unrealistic with like fan fiction, but whatever. Other things I write, I want to make the world a better place with my work. Oh, here we go. How does my being here in the universe, or excuse me, how does my, being here in the universe change humanity for the better? Well, I mean, ideally, like, you know, I want to, you know, I feel like, oh my God. So I feel like a lot of times with books and stories, you know, I've always wanted things to be more popular. I think as much as, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say, I'm like rambling. What I'm trying to say is like, what I want to create and what I've always wanted to create since I was younger is like, you know, not just, you know, a successful story or successful series for queer people, but like a successful series for queer people that is also like just beloved by everyone and is like successful on the level of major franchises. I'm not going to say the one, the one I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it, but you know what I'm talking about. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to create that for queer people that makes it so it's just like a whatever thing, you know what I mean? And you can see yourself as like not just a hero of your own story, because that does exist, but like a hero of a story that's like hugely influential. That's what I want. And, I want people to be able to see themselves in my work, and I want them to be able to see themselves in these stories that I've created and to feel good about themselves and feel like they're seen and heard in, what I do. And even in these videos, I want people to see themselves and like hear their stories that maybe they haven't heard told before. If you could have one single wish granted, what would it be? Boy, this is difficult to choose one. Because like I want to say to be a successful author. Like that's the thing that comes to mind first. That's always been the thing that comes to mind first as like one wish that I could have granted immediately, because that's what I love. I want to be a full-time author. Like my dream since I was a kid has always been like the idea of going on a book tour and signing books for people and just getting to know your fans in a way that I've actually been able to do writing fanfic, but not on an in-person level. Like I want to be able to, see my fans in person. How comfortable are you with your own mortality? Oh boy. It's so funny. When I was a teenager, I was very comfortable with it. I was always like, I don't want to go right now, but I'm like, whatever. But ironically, despite the fact that I was not close to him when my father died, it really put a lot of things into perspective and made my mortality like, oh, okay, this is like a thing. And suddenly I became like terrified of death, which is really unlike millennials, I feel like, because our generation is like team kill me now. But yeah, it's strange. I mean, I know we all have to go sometimes, and I like try and remind myself that like, I've had this sort of motto with my mother since I was a kid is like, when it's your time to go, it's your time to go, all of that. But at the same time, I think like, especially right now, everyone has a fear of like, I don't want to die. So, not great is what I'm gonna say there. My comfort with my mortality, and that's so weird to me. Like I hate feeling that way. What is your highest core value? I think people need to just be good to each other and be kind to each other. And I don't know if that's a value, but I think that's really important. I guess my value would be like honesty. I think that's so basic, but like, one of the things I've realized over many, many years of trying to figure out my sexuality and trying to figure out gender identity and trying to hide those things and what have you over the years is like, I don't really have time for like secrets of stupid shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's not really where I'm at. That's not really what I'm aiming to do. So honesty is pretty important to me. To the best of your knowledge, how do other people perceive you? So this is sort of interesting to me because I have been told by people in the past that I am intimidating, which I find very strange. And I guess it kind of makes sense because I've tried to build up this like persona of like a cold bitch who doesn't have feelings and doesn't care about anything and like is just very cold and ice princess and like whatever. And I know I've built that up to protect myself. It hasn't worked, but that's that's the concept of like, I want to protect myself from getting hurt because I am someone who loves very, very deeply. As I talked about in the last video, I love very deeply, I love very hard and very quickly, and I don't know why, and sometimes I don't like that about myself, but it is a reality. And I don't think I'm starting to come to terms with the fact it's not actually a bad thing, as long as I don't let it be a bad thing, if that makes sense. So how would you like others to perceive you? You know, for a long time I would have said as like this, you know, cold person who doesn't have feelings or emotions, or is like this frigid, you know, bitch. But now I don't know how I'd like other people to perceive me. I honestly don't entirely care, if that makes sense. Like I'm not one of those people. It's really interesting because I know a lot of people who are just like really curious how others perceive them. And some people I know, like some of my friends, like it like keeps them up at night, it seems like. And I'm just, I don't think I really care how people perceive me. I mean, I hope they perceive me as like kind at the very least, or at least kind to them, or someone who makes them happy and someone who they enjoy being around. But other than that, I don't really care how people perceive me. How confident are you in your abilities to make decisions for yourself? I mean, for the most part, I would say fairly confident. But there are definitely times where I guess it depends on the decision. Like, I'm not as indecisive as I think a lot of people that I know, but I'm not as... I do second guess things a lot, and I do wonder about things a lot. I try and remind myself, like, you know, when it came to my name change, right? There was sort of like a worry of like, oh, what if I grow to hate this name? Like, what if in 5 years I don't want this name? Or, you know, even when I was, you know, when I've been considering SRS, it's kind of like, well, what if you make this decision now and then years down the line decide, oh, that was a mistake? What do you do? And the thing I've sort of tried to tell myself is like, I have to make decisions with the knowledge that I have right now. So if I'm going to make a decision on something that I'm going to do that's going to be pretty life-changing, I kind of have to make it with the knowledge that I have right now. So even, for instance, you know, coming out as I have again, you know, my fear for a while there was like, oh, what if I, you know, say, oh, I'm a lesbian, and then, you know, fall for a man? Like, what do I do? Like, I have to backtrack. And honestly, okay, but you can't, like, you have to just sort of do things with the information you have now. The information I have right now is that I'm not attracted to men. I have no interest in men, and therefore it's not that it's not possible. It's just that I have to base my current feelings on where I'm at right now. And I do think it's important that we have these conversations and we let people sort of not be, you know, bogged down in like one sexuality or another, that we don't force people into a label and say, well, if you've identified as this, then you have to stay that. What is your biggest self-limiting belief? I think I would say there's a fear of that I don't deserve the things that I want. I think when you're a person who has spent a long time, like, for your own self-protection, kind of making yourself like, I'm like this big bad bitch who doesn't need anybody and doesn't care about anything and is like, you know, that person, you sort of convince yourself, not intentionally, but sort of accidentally, that that's true, that everything you've said about yourself is true and you don't deserve these things. And yeah, I think that's kind of my most self-limiting belief, is that I just feel like, yeah, sure, I want these things and I think I can have them, but do I deserve them? And one of the ways I'm trying to combat that is to remind myself that, I mean, this may sound like a shitty reasoning, but honestly, I feel like there's a lot of people who have a lot of great shit who I wouldn't say deserve them. Like, they're not great people. I don't think being a great person is an indicator of whether or not you're going to get the things that you want. So I can't use the I don't deserve them as a reason, because what makes you deserving of them? Like, being a bad person does not equal not deserving. So like, even if it were true that I was a bad person, quote unquote, because of like all the stuff I've told myself over the years for my own protection, that doesn't mean that I don't deserve it, if that makes sense, or that it should stop me from getting it. Who is the most important person in your life? I'm gonna say, I mean, obviously my mother is really important to me. I think she's probably the most important person to me, because we've really just had each other for so long, and that's an important relationship to me. And I can't think of anybody else who comes to mind who's like the most important person to me. There are definitely people who are important to me and who matter, but like, she's always the one who I think is the most important person to me. And it probably should be myself. But yeah, that's not how that goes. Who is your greatest role model? So this is where I think I'm really struggling, because for 4 years now, and I've been pretty open about this on my channel, I think, and everywhere, but like for years now, my biggest role model was literally J.K. Rowling. Like, she came from nothing. She became a huge success as an author. You know, that was everything I wanted for myself as a writer. So for me, she was my biggest role model. And now I'm kind of dealing with the fact of like, that was not a good choice. So, I don't know who my biggest role model is. I want to say myself now, because I'm like, who else do I have? Like, it's pretty cliche at this point to say my mother. Like, that's okay. But like, honestly, if it comes to like a role model of like, you know, going after what you want, growing as a person, and like really working to better yourself constantly, like, it is me. It has to be me. I have to be my own role model, because I'm the one who's doing all this work. I'm the one who is trying to be the best person I can be and work through all of this shit from my past. So I think it's me, which is surprising. Who is a person that you don't like yet you spend time with? I don't generally, that I know of, I don't generally spend time with people that I don't like. I definitely have people that I talk to, I guess that could be considered spending time with them, who I have a weird relationship with. There's definitely people who I have talked to and I've had a relationship with in the past, and that I spend time with on like digitally, I guess, who every time, most of the time that I talk to them, it's like, why am I doing this to myself? You know what I mean? What is something that is true for you no matter what? That one's hard. What's something that's true for me no matter what? I guess what's true is like, I feel like the only constant in my life since, you know, with everything that I've been trying to figure out about myself, is that I'm a writer and I love writing. And that's the one thing that I feel like has been true throughout all of my many comings out, is that what I want? Comings out. Through all of my many coming out processes, being a writer and loving writing and loving to create worlds and give people a world to go into has always been what I love. What is your moral compass in making difficult decisions? This is an interesting, like, philosophical question. My go-to is like, what moral compass, but that's not true. I think for a long time it's kind of like what would make everyone else happy, and it should kind of be like what would make you the most happy. I guess it depends on the difficult decision. I feel like this isn't like a one-size-fits-all, at least for me. So it's like, what is my moral compass? I mean, obviously I don't want to do something that would be harmful to people, and I try and consider that in a lot of things. But I guess it depends on the difficult decision. Like, when it came to the difficult decision of, like, coming out, for me, it was just kind of like, that wasn't really a difficult, I guess that wasn't a difficult decision. So what's a difficult decision at this point? I mean, coming out the first time was difficult, and I didn't really, like, I was afraid to lose people, but I was also like, I have to do what's right for me. So this one's kind of tricky. I do want to do, like, I want to do good things, I guess, and do the right thing, whatever that means. What is one failure that you have turned into your greatest lesson? When I self-published my book in 2011, that was a pretty big failure to me. And what I learned from that is, if I don't like what I'm trying to put out there, why should anyone else? And I think at that point in my life, I had already tried so many times to get published. I'd already tried so many times to get interest in my work, and I was just tired, and I just wanted to put it out there and see what happened. And I wasn't really entirely happy with it, but I was like, I have to just put something out there. And I did, and nobody cared because I didn't really try that hard, because I didn't really like it. What role does gratitude play in your life? Okay, so this one's actually really big for me. I may have talked about this before, but in the last like 3 years, this has become like a huge part of my life, because it's really, really important to me. It didn't used to be. I used to be like did not care, didn't think, my thought was like, I'll be grateful when I have what I want. And it wasn't until I started like looking into it and researching it and doing it that I realized that it's just something that's really, really important to me. And it's interesting because I kind of hit a turning point. I've talked about this before. I was listening to RuPaul's podcast, and she was talking about how, you know, staying positive and being a positive person, and like not letting yourself like dwell in the negativity is like something you have to work towards. And I was convinced for years as a young person that people who were like super positive were like either A, lying to themselves, or B, like just some weird aberration that was like born that way, and they like were just always positive people all the time. And it wasn't until I listened to that podcast and I heard Rue talking about how she has to work at it that I was like, oh, that's a thing. Like, I can do that. I can work at it and just become a more positive person. And so then I started getting into like positivity and gratitude and like all of these things. And long story short, gratitude became one of the things that I kept the most. Like, obviously I work to be more positive, but it's not always easy. And there's some times where it's just like exhausting being positive all the time. I will say that. But gratitude is something that I feel like it just makes me feel better, if that makes sense. When you list out like specifically, and I have for a while, I've tried to do it like every day. That's not always something I remember to do, but I try and make a habit of doing it like every day. And it just makes me feel good. I had like a whole notebook that was just like daily, just gratitudes. And like even just things that like are simple, just like, you know, I'm grateful that I'm able to do the things that I'm able to do. I'm grateful that I have an opportunity to, you know, make YouTube videos. I'm grateful for the creativity and inspiration to write. I'm grateful for, you know, a job now that I like. I'm grateful for, you know, this apartment that I love. I'm grateful for, you know, just random things. And when you say that and when you write it down especially, it A, puts things into perspective, but B, it just makes me feel good. I don't know how to explain it. And it was funny because I know a lot of people who are like, oh, you know, when you are grateful for what you have, you'll have, you know, the universe will give you more stuff to be grateful for. That's what they said. And for me, my thought is, even if that's that's not true, which I can't say for certain if it is or it isn't. I mean, in some ways, I've certainly received more to be grateful for. But for me, it just feels good. Feels good to, have gratitude and to be knowledgeable about what you have and like write it down and list it and just say like, to have this gratitude. It just feels good for me. I'm not saying it's for everyone. I'm not going to say, like, I'm not a psychologist, whatever. I'm not going to say, like, it's this thing. I just know that it has been immensely helpful for me. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, I don't know, it just makes me feel good. So it's extremely important to me, and it plays a pretty big role in my life now. It didn't always, but now it does. How do you feel about your parents? Oh boy. Well, obviously, I have a great relationship with my mother. I love my mother. We've always had a good relationship. I think it's difficult sometimes because we're very similar, and I think that we clash sometimes because of that. But I do believe we want what's best for each other, and we want each other to be happy. So yeah, I definitely, that's a good relationship. As for my father, my father's been dead for going on 3 years. 2018, 2019, 2021 will be 3 years. It's weird. It's always weird when I think about it. It's always weird when I think about him. I spent a long time being afraid of him. I spent a long time trying to do whatever I thought would make him happy or proud of me or whatever, which sounds sad. I spent a long time wanting to be anything but him. And now I feel like I'm kind of at the stage now where I feel sorry for him, because I realize how miserable of a place that he was in, that he had to drag people down into that place where he was. I realize how unhappy he was, and I talked about this before when I was, me and my friends and everyone were kind of like all working on ourselves together, like a year or two ago. And I realized that he very much never got to the level that I have been able to get to. And that sounds very pretentious. What I mean is, for him, everything was everyone else's fault. Everything was, he was the victim in everything. And I realized that he was just such an unhappy person. And he died an unhappy person and a lonely person because he pushed everyone away. And maybe he did that for the same reasons that I have tried to, harden my own heart and to protect himself. Maybe that's what happened. And that's a sad realization. And I'm working very hard to, forgive him, but also say, I do feel sorry for him, because I think he was a very sad, miserable person. And I don't think that's how anyone should live. How is your relationship with money? Well, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, when I was talking about like why I've stayed at a job that I didn't love, is the same reason a lot of people do. It's that, not to go back to a lot of the new agey stuff, but it's, it's a lack mindset. It's that fear of not having enough always, because that's, a lot of the ways I grew up, and that's how my mother grew up, and that's how my father grew up, and that's how their parents grew up. It's that, always having to work your ass off for every little thing and never feeling like, it was enough, because you always had to save, because there was always going to be something that came up. And I'm trying to learn to be better. I'm trying to learn to at the risk of, again, sounding very new agey, trust the universe and trust that things are going to work out the way they're meant to, and things are going to work out, period. And that I don't have to worry about money, and that, you know, it's going to be okay. That's easier said than done. And especially right now, I think a lot of us have a very bad relationship with money. I'm trying to do better. That's what I'll say. It's not as good as it could be, but I'm trying to do better. How do you feel about growing old someday? You know, for a long time, turning 30 was a big deal to me because I had this thought in my head of where I was supposed to be at 30 and where I was supposed to be in my life and what I wanted for myself at 30 and my expectations for myself at 30. And now, you know, I'm a few weeks essentially from being 29, and that was scary for me for a while there. You know, when I was 27 and I realized I had 3 years to 30, I had a, you know, breakdown as far as like, you know, emotionally. I felt like, oh my God, you know, I'm about to be 30 and I haven't accomplished anything that I want to do for my life. I haven't done the things that I wanted to do. And what it really was is that I wasn't successful, quote unquote. And that's, you know, a whole other argument about what is success, what isn't success. That's a whole other video, quite frankly. But what I realized was, you know, that's around the time I started getting into like gratitude and, you know, all these things to sort of realize that actually I have done a lot and I am successful. And it may not be a type of success right now that some people can see and some people consider successful, but I am. And that's something that, you know, it's okay that maybe it's not something everyone can see immediately. That's okay. And that's something I've sort of had to learn. What role has formal education played in your life and how do you feel about it? See, here's my thing. What does formal education mean as opposed to like informal education, like school versus like learning stuff on YouTube? I mean, obviously formal education, I went to college, I got a bachelor's of science. So you know, it's played that role, but it hasn't because, you know, I don't have a job in my field because I don't really care enough to. You know, graphic design doesn't make me happy in the way that writing does. Graphic design is fun, but I've always said that the best day in graphic design doesn't compare to the worst day of writing. You know, it just doesn't compare to me. It's fun, but it's not the same at all. So, it's played the role in the sense that I have an education, but I'm not doing anything with it. And I don't really feel any type of way about it. I'm glad that I have the education. Sometimes I want to go back to school. Sometimes I miss it. Sometimes I want to do like creative writing. But then I think, where do I have the time for that in my life? I don't think I do. I believe your destiny is predetermined or in your hands to change as you wish. For years, I believed that everything was predetermined. And there is a part of me that still kind of believes that. And because I've always believed that like everything that's meant to happen is going to regardless, and it's going to happen as it's meant to happen. So that's like always like on my tongue. So I don't know. But then a part of me has to believe that at some point you're able to make changes and able to, you know, do better. But I don't know, because then it's like, okay, you know, is me learning about myself and learning all of this stuff and like working on myself, is that predestined, or was that something that I'm doing to make my life better? I don't know. It's such a weird philosophical question. I'm kind of 50-50. Part of me feels like it's predestined. Part of me feels like maybe there is something you can do to change things. It's very interesting, especially as a writer. That's always like a... Okay, actually, you know what? I'll answer this from a writing perspective. The thing I love more than anything in writing, and this is especially true in fanfic, but also true in other works that I've done, is I love like couples that are fated to be together. I know that soulmates and all of that is something that we're like shoved down our throats as like a society, but the idea of a couple that like no matter what happens, no matter where they are, no matter any other circumstance, they are meant to be together and nothing is going to keep them apart come hell or high water. That is like my jam. So I guess in that way that would be fate, and in that way I guess to an extent I do believe that everything is kind of predetermined, because that's what fate is. And so everything that happens, regardless if you think you're making a decision, you are making a decision, but that's the decision you were meant to make. It's very weird, because then it seems like free will isn't a thing, which I also don't believe. I believe that free will is a thing. I don't know. This is really philosophical and really deep for midnight 30. So what do you believe is the meaning of your life? So this is the last question. What is the meaning of my life? I'd like to think the meaning of my life is to make other people's lives better. Not in a like doing things for them and not, you know, doing things for myself, but like I want to make the world a better place. That's the purpose of my life. That's what I'm here to do. That's what I've always felt I was here to do, is make the world a better place, specifically with my writing. Maybe even with my YouTube videos. I don't really know. I suppose that could be. But definitely I think that's what I'm here to do. That's what I've always felt that I was here to do for quite a few years now. So almost 20 at least. So I would say it's a fair assessment that that's the meaning of my life, to make the world a better place. So yeah, that was 29 questions to get to know myself better. I did find another website that had 33 questions, so I don't know if you like this video, maybe we'll do another one. This was really interesting. I feel like I learned a lot about myself actually, and it's not new stuff per se, like it's stuff that I knew. It's interesting to think about and like process out loud. It's kind of a completely different experience from like, you know, thinking this stuff in your head and answering these questions in your head. It's completely different to like talk them out loud and figure out how you feel, you know, out loud, if that makes sense. This is very enlightening. I feel like I did actually learn quite a bit about myself, and I feel like maybe I do know myself a little bit better now.